Well, thank you for coming today. My name is Maura Race. I'm part of the CLI Advisory Board, and welcome to this wonderful program right here to talk about fundraising. With us, we have a panel of Fritz Crab. Fritz has been in the business for 20 years. He just retired from the Literacy Center. He was with GRPS, though, for 20 years. He was then with the United Way, and he was the chair of the Schools of Hope Initiative, and I'll let him go a little bit more in detail, but we go way back. Steve Polo. Steve has been in the industry also for, you're 20 years too, in nonprofit, I believe. Started as the baby, right? And he is the director of foundation giving for Grand Valley State University. And he's also sitting on numerous boards, and one of which he and I are joined together, which is the Michigan Grant Writers Association. So wonderful for Steve coming back for lots of different things. Michigan Grant Writers Roundtable, excuse me. And then Angela Morris. Angela is with Kent ISD in their grant writing program, working with the federal, state grants, and private foundation possibly, for many years. Also, Angela and I go back with her being with the instrumental part of a newsletter that goes out to numerous individuals and agencies across the country or the state. So we have a plethora of information here that's going to be able to be shared with you. If you have any questions, please wait to the end of the presentation, and then we'll have plenty of time to be able to do that. We will have to talk into this, even though it's not magnifying our voice, it is going into the camera. So don't let this scare you. I'm going to pass it over. There you go, Fritz.
Well, again, thank you, Maura, for that introduction. We're very happy to be here. The packet that I gave you has been kindly provided with grant sources by our participants in the panel today, so feel free to use that, ask any questions that you want to about that. And we have provided you with an overview of our session. A warning, you will not come out as an expert grant writer at the end of 1 hour session. So if that's your expectations, we're very sorry to disappoint you today on that one. But what we'd like to do today is just sort of give you a brief overview of some of the issues and facing grant writers today, some of the uses of grants, what they are used for and what they cannot do. So we really have 4 different areas that we're really going to comment on, talk about, answer some of those questions that we have already posed for you on here. And then at the end, feel free to write down your questions. We will talk about any questions that you want to talk about as we go along. So the first one that we want to talk about today is the question about what do grants actually provide. Once you get a grant, is it the end all and be all? How much of your organization should be funded by grants? And what do you have to do to prepare? So I'm going to let Steve and Angela really begin to talk about that question for their organizations and other organizations that they've worked with about what do grants actually provide for an organization.
Good afternoon, Steve Polo again. The way I think about grants are that they really should be the cherry on top of the ice cream. The individual support should be the vast majority of your operating budgets for a sustainable nonprofit. Foundations and corporations and government agencies, they really see grants nowadays as providing specific project support. So you're responsible for running your program. They want you to undertake a special project to take your organization to the next level. So it's always about new, better, bigger, faster, more impactful. And so you have to actually do the work before you can think about most grant support. So you need a track record, you need a good board, you need individual support, which leads you to getting that grant.
That's a really good description of grants. I guess I wanted to also just reinforce, I'm not sure who I have in the room, I know you're all tasked with fundraising probably, but a couple of things I just want to reinforce about grants. I work with school teachers and small nonprofits in terms of writing grants. So a lot of what I get are small organizations that are just starting to raise money. And the first thing they usually turn to are grants. And I think one of the reasons that people do that is it seems like an easy first place to go for money. And I think one of the reasons they think it's an easy first place to go to for money is because the ask is not direct. You don't have to sit in a room and look another person in the face and ask for money. And I think that's not correct, because there's a great deal of readiness that an organization has to have in place to be able to get a grant. And it's just as high a level, if not higher, than having that first ask with a major donor or any kind of donor. So I guess the thing I would try to stress with small nonprofits is that, one, grants is not your entire strategy for fundraising. Don't ever think that, because grants, like Stephen just talked about, can fund some things and not other things very well. And two, it's never going to be an easy strategy. It's going to be a portfolio, a piece of a portfolio for you for fundraising, but it won't be the end all and be all for fundraising. And then just quickly, if you are at a level where you're going to be tasked with doing fundraising and you want a little bit more information, I do a class on grant writing, and I have a flyer up here that you can pick up later that goes over a little bit more of this. So, okay.
A couple of things that, as I was grant writing for the Grand Rapids Public Schools, I would frequently get calls saying, help, my program has been defunded, I need a grant to refund it. And grants, I think one of the things grants do not provide is an opportunity to rescue programs. So if you are being funded by a school system or government funding, and that funding is cut, it's very hard to get that funding to quote unquote rescue your program. And the other thing that we found with Grand Rapids Public Schools, anyhow, as I was grant writing, is people would expect to be funded for things that an organization should usually provide on its own. For example, people would come to me and say, you know, we need better chairs and tables, or we need this, that, and the other thing. And those were things that the organization is expected to provide on its own. So that infrastructure is often hard to find grants for. And the last thing, and I think I'd like to ask Steve and Angela to comment on this also, is one of the things that we have to think about with grants is most grants that you get are time limited. In other words, it's a 1-year grant, it's a 2-year grant, it's a 3-year grant. And then the questions that most organizations ask is, oh my God, my grant is running out, now what? You got to ask now what as soon as you know you got the grant. You have to plan for sustainability for the program, or you have to make the hard decisions sometimes that the program is going to have to end. So could I get Steve and Angela to comment a little bit on planning for sustainability?
Yes, the grant expires, and what we're talking about is sort of a dance. The donor has the delusion that everything will be fine. Their grant will fix the problem. The organization has the delusion that at the end of the grant, everything will be fine. So, but you're in a sort of a partnership that you want everything to succeed. So you have that leverage of, you'll go back maybe and try, like, okay, we were successful, could we have a new grant to continue doing the same thing? So there's that opportunity. But what you're doing is you're creating, through this program that you launch with the grant, you're creating information and success, and you want to pull together people that are being affected and directing that success. The community, business leaders, politicians, parents maybe, and then sit with them, meet with them throughout this process of this program that you got funded. Say, what do you think? What can we do better? What are we learning? How can we keep it going forward? And as you bring people together, they're invested in the success, and then they're willing to think about how we can continue it, whether it's through individual support, corporate sponsorships, fee for service, and then it's not you trying to guess what you will do. You're letting the community tell you how that will happen.
Yeah, I would echo everything that Stephen said. I think one of the things that really turned on a light bulb for me was when I did some reading about philanthropy and their giving theory. So here's what they felt in the 60s and 70s. If we give the money for a project and it's effective, federal government will take it over. That was literally the theory of Ford and some of the other big foundations. That worked really well, right? So
that's why this is set
that's
up.
the sustainability plan.
Something will happen.
So we're going to set up model projects. And in many cases in the 60s and 70s, that worked really well because federal government was expanding, and they would throw out these very interesting, innovative programs, Head Start, proved that it was very effective, and federal government money came in and picked those up. That's not working anymore. So that is one of the big pieces. So when I talk to grant, or one of the things, even before the grant ends, you're going to have to deal with sustainability because there's always a question on the grant. What are you going to do when the funding ends? Okay, stupid me, I used to write another grant. You can't put that in there and get funded anymore. You have to have something else that's more than that. So what I tell, because I usually teach school people and PTOs, this is why grants are better for some things and not for others. The best thing you can write on that question is, my school will pick up the funding. Yeah, okay. But, rarely does that happen, right? Okay, so then the second best thing you can write there is that grant funding paid for something that now is sustained because you just bought computers. They're there, right? You're done. You just put training into people's heads. It's there, you're done. Okay, and then the third thing you can do is just what Stephen was saying. We're going to do this project. We're going to show that it's very effective and demonstrate to the community that they're going to want it so much that we're going to have this other fund development plan, and then we're going to list, not just we're going to write another grant, but very detailed, here's how we're going to try to support it. The worst thing, though, is to try to put a grant on something, like salary, that every year, end to end to end, you as the person that has to raise funds are going to stay up all night and worry about, oh my gosh. So that's why I think grants are good for some things and not as good for other things.
Could I make one last question or comment, please? So let's go back to the main point here. What do grants provide? I worked with an organization that was up for winning a truck. And it's a big sort of grassroots organizations could win a truck. And in the application process, they were writing about why they needed a truck. Like, we could deliver this many more things. I'm like, no one cares about why you need a truck. Talk about how many kids you can help. Talk about how their lives will be changed. It's vision, vision, vision. And I was just at a storytelling workshop. You tell the story, the best way you can, how literacy can be helped, why kids need literacy. You know, everyone can speak and talk. That's not the problem. It's what can you do better, more faster. And then people with money are good business people usually, and you make that switch. If we had a truck, we could be more efficient. We could save more money. It's an exponential growth. That's what they're looking for. It's not one truck helps 100 kids, 2 trucks helps 200. It's 2 trucks helps 400 or 500. And if you can make that connection, it just blows people's minds, and you're more likely to secure it. It's not the truck, it's how you're going to help Grand Rapids 20 years from now when they all grow up and start businesses and are leaders.
So grants provide some opportunities for funding for your organization, but I think in summary, you've got to be prepared to write them. You've got to be prepared to sustain them, and you got to know what they are for and plan for them as a percentage of your whole fundraising portfolio, not the whole thing. But if you're new to grants, then the next question is, so if I know what they provide, where do I find grant opportunities? There are thousands, literally thousands of grant opportunities out there. And the question is both where do I look for those opportunities, but secondly then, how do I narrow those opportunities down so that what I'm actually sending in has some chance of actually getting funded. And there are probably different strategies for both federal, state, and local, and even corporate funders. So I'd like to have Angie and Steve talk a little bit about where they find the best opportunities for grants, and again to thank them, Angie and Judith Larsen, who was unable to be with us, was scheduled to be here, was unable to be with us, but did provide us with a lot of the opportunities that are listed in the handouts you have. So I don't know who wants to go first here.
First thing I think anyone should do is head down to the main library, the main branch of the Grand Rapids Public Library, and ask for the research librarian that can help you with the Foundation Center resources. They're all free. The resources are tens of thousands of dollars if you were to buy licenses for yourself. You can even sit in a lot of them are wireless or internet based. You can sit in the parking lot and do it without even going inside. It's through the IP address. So there's something called the Foundation Center, which was established by foundations that pay the Foundation Center to tell you what they're interested in. It's really the only time that wealthy people give information about themselves because they only want to fund certain things. And so the Foundation Center, that's a good way to look at what gets funded. You can look at similar organizations, see where their funders are. You can talk to people and see if they would be interested in what you're doing. And a lot of the companies in town right now are really interested in sponsorships, ways to align what they do with successful programs in town, where you can bring people together and help kids and help people be employed and maybe buy their products.
Yeah, I'd echo the Foundation Center as a great resource. When I do my classes, this is the thing I spend the most time on, looking for the grants and making the right fit. And I say that grant writing is about 90% finding the right grant and 10% writing the grant, which is kind of depressing because writing a grant does take a lot of time. So, but if you write to the wrong person, you are wasting so much time. So it's sort of like dating the wrong guy. You're just wasting so much time. So it's so important to do the research up front and make sure that you are heading in the right direction. And I, again, work with a lot of nonprofits grassroots groups. They've never done anything before. They get real excited. They see a grant. Oh my gosh, they fund in science. Yay! Uh, so they fund sort of in the similar thing, and then they'll pursue it, and then it's just too much work. So I spend a lot of time really checking and making sure. If you want to do something other than foundation or corporate money, which is the Foundation Center, if you're looking for federal grants, grants.gov is basically the portal. So you don't have to worry about really anything other than that. So grants.gov, and you can search by keyword or you can search by agency. And on the right-hand side, you can click and sign up, and then you'll get an email to you about things that are coming up. And then we go into a lot more detail in class, and then I'll let Judith touch on this too. But once you think you found something that you're interested in, I go into what I call super stalker mode. And so I sign up for where the foundations congregate. And so I like to go to, foundations have their own learning groups. They have their own places where they talk amongst themselves. And so I try to go there and keep track of what foundations are taught. So for example, there's an education, all the foundations that are funding education talk amongst themselves about what they're funding and what they care about. And so I try to tune into that, download their research findings, make sure that I'm on track with what they are thinking about. So you stay on sort of the cusp. So let's say it's literacy. You try to find what is philanthropy as a, they consider themselves, they're changing, they're reforming. What are they thinking among their own industry, I guess? So try to stay up with what they're thinking as an industry.
And my apologies to Judith Larsen. I evidently told her the wrong building to start in. So Judith has joined us, and she will be commenting shortly on that. What I want to just say about where do I find grants is avoid, and I think the two panelists have alluded to that, avoid the shotgun approach, avoid sending it out to everybody in the world, and pay attention when you look at the Foundation Center or any online information about the 4 points that we have really talked about here on the outline. Geographic scope. You know, when I first started at Grand Rapids Public Schools with grants, there were some wonderful grants for education from the Skillman Foundation. Unfortunately, that only funds Detroit. There are grants that, you know, I wanted maybe $5,000, and there were, oh, this looks like a great grant opportunity. Our average grant is $50,000 to $75,000. Well, they're not going to fund a $5,000 program. So pay attention to what they fund. Conversely, if you need $75,000 and their average grant is $5,000, it's not going to work for you. Number of grants given. I run into this so many times in any organization that I've worked with. I would not, in Grand Rapids Public Schools, I would not apply for a grant unless there were 20 to 25 given nationwide. And that was still a long shot because they are so competitive. So pay attention, especially on federal and state grants, of the number of grants given. The big national grants, of course, they'll hire somebody in Washington to write the grant for them, and they are very, very competitive. And then who may apply? Some of them are only for schools. Some of them are only for 501c3s. Some organizations say application by invitation only, which means that you can't apply to them unless they ask you to apply. So pay attention to those factors in deciding whether or not to apply for a grant, and you'll save yourself a lot of time, and you'll also save the foundations a lot of time in writing rejection letters.
Hi, everyone. I believe you have a list of sources of grant opportunities in your packet. And this is something that we've compiled on the GRCC grants website, and it lists sources for grant opportunities by category. And so the first one is State of Michigan, and that's the state overall, all departments. That's a good place to start if you are looking for state grants. Although a lot of those these days, because of the budget, are very narrow, or almost they're almost like block grants now, where if you have one, you can continue to get one. However, the state of Michigan is now going to move into allocating grants for like ESL, ABE, and GED for by region. And so we're in Region 10, and there's going to be regional meetings that will decide who receives funds, such as school Section 107, and these are funds that are provided to K through 12s for adult basic education and English as a second language. So a lot of times, and I don't know if we talked about this very much, but partnering with another entity is a really great way these days to get into funding streams that your organization might not be able to all by itself. So, getting state funds or federal funds, and I think we are going to talk about the next topic is what you need to do to be prepared to get those kind of governmental funds. But it's always a good idea to take a look at some of these and then see who's getting the money, and if you have a relationship with them, then, or you can forge a relationship with them. Michigan Department of Education then has a separate Michigan Grants Available list, MyGal, and so there they compile federal, state, private, and other funding opportunities for education and youth. So that's a good source as well. As far as federal grants go, grants.gov is kind of the gold standard. They pretty much every federal agency has to list their grants through grants.gov. You can sign on to a listserv, which is a good thing and a bad thing, because you get these emails every day, and it will just list it. And I think you can narrow what you want to look for, but I kind of do them all, and so I sometimes, you'd be surprised what opportunities might be available through departments that you wouldn't have thought of, like the Department of Agriculture or something. I mean, there are training grants and things like that that can come through other federal agencies. So when you get the listserv, it'll have, section after section that will describe the grants, and then you can just click on the link, and it will take you right to grants.gov. And so that, if you're interested in federal grants, that's a place to go. And then the other kind of starting place is the Catalog for Federal Domestic Assistance, the CFDA. So all federal grants are listed in these catalogs. And so any federal grant, for instance, that you find through grants.gov will have a CFDA number. And that means that kind of goes back to that catalog. And so that's kind of where everything starts, because Congress will allocate money, and they'll pass a bill, and then they'll issue a notice, and the notice will be listed in the CFDA. So that's kind of a way to get additional information through the CFDA. But grants.gov usually will have it's more of a consolidated place where you can get the announcements and everything like that. And then as far as private funding sources go, there's a number of them. The Foundation Center, Michigan State University has a really wonderful library. KISD Grants and Resources Service Area, Chronicle Philanthropy, FundsNet, Grants Alert, Grantsmanship Center. There's a lot of grant notification lists or subscription services that you can get. We don't subscribe to too many. I don't know about the others. If you can pay to have these sent to you. I don't know. I think to do a more thorough search on your own. We've never really, in my career, I've never really paid. However, I am thinking of, there's this place called CD Publications, and I am actually thinking of them because their director was a lobbyist, and he has a newsletter that comes out, and he talks, and he goes and sits in all the congressional budget sessions, and so he has an inside view. So that's one. But the Grantsmanship Center, and we're going to talk about that as a source of training. I've been doing this for a lot of years, and I've actually really got into going back to the Grantsmanship Center, and I really started 20 years ago by taking Grantsmanship Center classes. They're not cheap, but that really, I think, is one of the best classes you can take, and they're all over the country, and so once you take the course, then you have access to all their resources. But even if you're not a member per se, going to the Grantsmanship Center is a website is a really great place to learn about how to apply. They'll have articles, they'll have notices. So it's kind of a repository that I've even gone back to now. So thank you.
Could I make one last? So we've talked about finding the grant opportunities, and this is fundraising, which is sort of relationship based. And it's good to know where the opportunities are, then how do you approach them? The larger foundations and the government agencies have what are called program officers, whose job is to be sort of a gatekeeper and an advocate for that source of funding. They're successful when they give the money away and the projects are successful. So I know the government agencies do workshops about how to apply, and I've never gone to them, but I think what you would want to do is start going to these and learning at least the jargon, what the upcoming projects are, and how to talk to them, so that it's all about sounding intelligent. You want to show that you know what's going on. And then these are mostly, I'm sure, local projects with the local foundations. Maybe the executive director works with the donor or the president of the foundation. Your job is to get chummy with the program officers and be a resource for them, help them do their job, send them emails. Emails are perfect for this type of thing. No one wants to meet personally. No one has time to talk on the phone. A little quick email that shows that you're a source of expertise in doing something that they're trying to do. Make sure the program officers on mailing lists for annual reports. Maybe I have in the past pulled the annual report, pull the label, hand address the annual report to that person with a note saying, check out the project on page 3 that you helped make possible. And for someone in my position at a university, letting the foundations know that if they ever got a request from a student or a faculty member that didn't come through my office, that it's not been authorized, and let me be the bad guy. So you're helping them, and then when you have something exciting coming up, you have built a relationship, and you can talk to them and say, I'd like to bounce some ideas off of you, see what you think about this. Is this something that would fit within your funding plans for next year or the following year? Do you know anyone that would be interested? The major foundations in town get together and they coordinate. So you want to use that coordination to your benefit. Anyone else?
And emphasize, as Steve said, that the local foundations get together. So if you get a bad reputation with Foundation A in town, if you've misused money or not done well on a project or not done your reports or messed up your budget or whatever, that gets spread around Grand Rapids. We're a big, small town, so be careful of that. The other term that I wanted to quickly mention in this one is you'll hear in grant writing 990s, which are federal forms that foundations need to file every year to talk about how to whom they gave money, how much money they gave away, who their officers are. And it slips my mind right now. Where do you find those? Guide Star, thank you. And Foundation Center. You can look up the 990s, and the two things that I always looked up, especially for local foundations, was number one, who's on their board of directors, because sometimes I knew some of those people, and secondly, to whom they gave money and how much they gave, to find out if how much money they were giving out, if there were any similar projects. So I urge you to get familiar with 990s, Guide Star and Foundation Center. You can find them online. They're several pages long. You got to scroll down to what you want, but they're a good source of information. I think people sometimes say, "Oh, good, we're going to write a grant," without thinking about all of the things that have to go into writing a grant before you even think about writing a grant. What is your capacity for having the information on hand, the staff on hand, the resources on hand that it takes to write a grant? So the next section we want to briefly speak about is, what does it take to prepare to write a grant? You can't decide today that you're going to write a grant tomorrow without having some of these things. So I'm going to ask Judith to sort of start on that and pick out maybe one or two things that you think are important, and then we'll pass it on to the other panelists.
Okay, well, the first thing on the list, and this is really the most important, is that you need to be a 501c3, which is a designation that's provided by the federal government that allows private and public foundations to provide funding to you as a tax write-off. And so the majority of grants, not all government grants require this, but certainly all private grants, a lot of donors, banks, things like that, you have to have a 501c3, or you need to partner with someone who has one, because that's how they write off the money that they donate. So that's a big one, and applying for that can take up to 18 months. So if you don't have a 501c3, if your organization does not, then you'll want to get going on that prior to applying for any grants. And then it's not on here, but having a board of directors that is fairly well established or fleshed out. If it's a single person who's the president, vice president, treasury, and secretary, and then their husband or wife is the is the other board member, that's not the capacity they're looking for. So working on development of your board would be another thing. And then the other one is the outcomes. Now, this relates to, any program that you're going to apply for funds for. These days, I really look at establishing the outcomes first. And so, for instance, if you're thinking about applying for a grant, say for that will serve. You may think that by applying for money to help someone read, really in your organization, you're going to help them get a job because of it. And so, but really you need to target exactly who you're going to serve and how and what the outcome is going to be. And by starting there, when you're looking at a program that you want to get funding for, starting at looking at the outcomes can really be a way to help clarify everything for your board and for, and also to look, helps to develop the need statement. So for instance, an outcome could be that, you're going to look at the number of people ages 18 to 30. You're going to increase the number of people ages 18 to 30 who can read at a high school level. I mean, that's a different outcome than increasing the number of people who will get a job because they have increased literacy levels. And so when you look at outcomes, it really, how specific you are really will drive where you're going to go for your funds and how you're going to write that proposal.
Yeah. Should I talk about need statement?
Talk about whatever you want.
Okay. Well, let's talk about the need statement. A lot of the times we get into this work because we're really passionate about the need. Like, we're going to change the world and there's children can't read. I think of a grant proposal as sort of a quiver of arrows, and you have 5 arrows, and the need statement is 1 arrow. You don't want to And usually a proposal that I write is about 5 pages because I want to get to the point. And it'd be easy to write a 4-page need statement, and then you don't have any room left to write about what you're going to do. So really need to get to the point about the need. It's children aren't reading, and use some census data or data from GRPS, and be really clear about what children and why you think they aren't reading. When you're writing to someone, I always think about you're writing to your aunt. She's interested in what you're doing. She wants to help. She's not an expert. You don't want to make her feel dumb or embarrass her, but you want to be clear and get some information towards her. And when you're doing the need statement, you want to be clear, succinct, passionate, but you don't want to beat a dead horse.
All those are really good. So I'm just going to add a couple trend kinds of things. I'll touch on a couple things. One trend that I'm seeing, especially with the federal grants, but maybe you've seen them even with the foundation, is the word best practices. So when you get to start doing your project plan, a lot of them require that your plan is a best practice. It's sort of like an off-the-shelf kind of thing. And so just be aware of that. Or they might use another word, but it's usually something that has a proven research-based practice is another one. So, let's say it's a literacy program where there's actually some data that shows that it's been effective. So just heads up on that. Another huge trend, again with the larger grants, is partners. So you just can't even walk in the door on some of these grants unless you're a big collaborative partnership. And the day that grant drops, you cannot be out finding partners. You don't have enough time. So you need to be at the table doing collaborative planning and work throughout the year so you're ready to do these kinds of grants. So that's just another one. Then just two other tips. One, grant writing is a pain. So to make it easier, once you labor over that first grant, that is all seedbed for your next ones. And I cut those pieces up and I store them, in files, and I'm still trying to, I think you have a really good way of getting access to it, in little folders it says, description and piece this and piece that. So it's going to go faster if you start taking those pieces and just like Frankenstein recycling it. So and I guess the only other thing, I don't know if you've ever done one before, but I usually have people in my classes that have never done grant writing before, and it's very intimidating. It's not hard to do. It's just doing the just following the instructions. It's literally, we don't like to tell anyone that because then they won't pay us to do it.
It's very complicated.
Shh. But it really isn't that hard. So I'll stop there.
And the one piece I want to touch on is budget. Your budget, we always said in Grand Rapids Public Schools anyhow and other places that you don't usually get the Cadillac in a grant, you get the Ford. It will do the job, it will get you where you want to go, but you don't need the best computers in the world. You don't need the high-end office furniture. You don't need, so you often don't get the Cadillac. And make sure that whatever you're asking for in your budget is detailed in your grant. When we first started reading service learning grants years ago, you'd be amazed how many people thought they needed a ton of computers to do service learning in the schools. They didn't get the grant because you don't need computers to do service learning. And be very careful about what you're putting in for organizational support. And what they will allow. They'll usually tell you what they will allow and what they won't allow you to put in the budget. So be very, very careful on that. And most budgets also require some kind of a match, either a dollar match or an in-kind match. So an in-kind match is things that your organization is contributing to the project, but is not included in the grant budget. It could be your office space. It could be your telephone. It could be your salary if you're not putting your salary in the grant. But the more you can show that the organization is buying into this particular program by its in-kind and its direct contributions is important. So be very careful with your budget. So those are just some of the quick things that you'll need to write a grant. But many of you may be sitting here asking, then where do I get the help to write the grant? And we have some people who have already said that they are providing classes and Grants Roundtable. So I'll briefly describe your programs, Angie, your class again, and Steve, the Grants Writers Roundtable.
You want to do
I help run the Grant Writers Roundtable of West Michigan, and there's one on the Lake Shore and one in mid-Michigan. It's really an informal professional support group for grant writers, people that raise money through the written word. So there's grant writers and executive directors and other people, and sharing best practices. And one thing I found is the people that do this work, there's usually only one of us in an institution, where they're, like in fundraising, there's probably multiple major gift officers, and it's a completely different skill set. If you like to sit in front of someone and ask them for a gift and you get the gift and you walk away, you're not gonna sit down and write a grant proposal. So we're people that do that. We meet once a month on the third Wednesday of every month at noon at different nonprofits around town, just so that we can see how different agencies do their work. It's fun. And I have some business cards if you want to join my mailing list right here. We have a website, Grant Writers Roundtable. You can find it, and we're on Facebook. I also post job listings on it.
It's a great resource, and frequently there are program officers that stop in, and it's a very wonderful resource. I have a couple of my flyers up here. I do a community grant writing class. It's like $25, $35. It's aimed at teachers and other nonprofit people. You're welcome to attend that. It's 3 hours. And then I have an e-newsletter that is free. You can sign up. There's a little flyer there if you want to put your name on and then leave it, and I'll add you to the list. It also lists just grants with deadlines. Again, many of them are education-based, but also community, because I have a lot of community people on it now. And then it usually has a small article on a topic of interest to people who are running small nonprofits. So.
And of course, you must know about the Johnson Center for Philanthropy that is located at Grand Valley State University. Besides providing some great community data through the Community Research Institute, they also provide many opportunities for seminars, brown bag lunches, so forth and so on. You can find that all on GVSU Johnson Center for Philanthropy. And I can only echo what Judith already said about the value of the grantsmanship training. It is not cheap, but oftentimes it will be in the area. We hosted one at United Way about 2 or 3 years ago during the summer. It's a week-long training. It's excellent. We certainly thank you for your attention today in this, and are available to answer any of your questions, and ask you not to forget to fill out the evaluation form that is in your folder before you leave. But we're here until 3 or a little after, and any questions that you might have, we're happy to take. Maura, did you?
Is there any questions right now that you'd like to ask the presenters? No? Well, on behalf of CLI and the summit today, thank you very much for bringing your expertise to our wonderful group here, and thank you for bringing your knowledge and your desire to learn more to this room. So thank you again, and like you said, if there's anything specific that you want to talk to them about, their business cards are up here. Don't hesitate to give them a call also. Thank you.